of the objects. So this makes quite difficult the communication. I'm in Cyprus, and I have set a studio in a room in my house, and I'm trying to produce. I will show you things that I do at the moment, but I think I will make an introduction with showing you things that I did 2019, and then because it's a continuation of what I'm doing now. I think I should share screen. Is it working?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my practice is related to social politics, is related to sexualities, queer spaces, and I see into this the position of the body. I had a presentation last year that was referring to the investigation of the territories of the body and the space. And I was researching the personalized eroticismus. I was interested in domestic fetishismus as a way of achieving sexual awareness. So I was interested actually in the availability of the body to investigate its territories, its limits, to be liquid, to acclaim, to be transparent. So some of the objects I had last summer was, this is a C print on aluminium. It's called Grey Creases. It's a domestic. It's an object found that I administrated on a furniture. So I created this picture. I comment on the on-off identities that we adapt online and offline, and the liquidity of it. I talked on the body, on the relationship to the body, the eroticismus and the body, and this is a domestic object. It's a lemon squeezer, so I used it as a sexual object. In relation to this object that is called pudendal nerve, hosted in pelvis. Pudendal nerve is the nerve that is innervating the pelvis, so is associated with the erection, is associated with sexuality. And I didn't use the pelvis as a round, as an ovoid shape, but I tried to squeeze it as to fit in a corner because I wanted the body to expand in the space. Another object is called parasympathetic twins. I'm using a lot medical terms because I am a doctor, so it's something that is natural for me to use these terms. Parasympathetic twins is called, and it talks about two identical systems, that they are sympathetic and parasympathetic system, a nervous system that is controlling the guts. Actually is the system that controls the functions of the body. One system is accelerating a function, one is pulling back. So there is a continuous antagonism. Another object is a little boy's apple grater. This is an electric blanket, which is a print on a blanket, but it's electric, so it can have the heat also. And it's a picture of a part of my body, the dorsal part of my hand. This is a ring that is called bro. And I comment on the bromance, and I have it on a mechanical, on an industrial mechanisms that is turning. So I'm interested in the way that men are into all these little jobs in the house. And because my latest project is associated with a new material, with a material that I worked back in 2016, but I found that is associated with my work at this time. I'm just showing you how I applied soap, and then I will talk to you about my latest project. So I use soap as a washing basin. I use soap as a pile of soaps. I did plates of soap, and I used soap associated with charcoal. And my intention in that time, it was to talk on cleansed and on domestic violence, but also the power of the soap as an OCD gesture that could rip and could take away, wash away all the shame or the dirt or anything that somebody can experience from domestic violence. My latest readings, they are associated with sexuality again. They are associated with, my latest reading had to do with art and porn. It's an interesting book that comments on how we can see a picture as art or pornography. Is it the place where we see it? Is it the way we see it? Is it the time that we see it? So another book that it was fascinating reading is The Penetrated Male, where it talks about the vision, the characteristics we think that a penetrated male can have. It should be feminine, it should have a position that is given to a woman. So it's very attached to the binary logic of how to talk on a man or a woman, on genders. Another book that I found very interesting is Teston Junkie, Notes on this is an article actually, and Teston Junkie is a book from Preciado, and this is an article that is commenting and making notices to a group of psychoanalysts on how to approach genders. And the latest book that I'm reading now is called An Apartment on Uranus, and is again by Preciado. That is a philosopher, a Spanish philosopher living in Paris at the moment, that comments on the biopolitics, and also talking about the binaries. So my work relates to the investigation of the body and in a space that is not attached from any language that is given or any language of the binary system. So I'm interested in the corporeality of the space. I'm interested in the spatial elements that the body has. So I'm just gonna show you some sketches or some ideas I'm having. I'm in the process of producing. I was about to have a show in May that was related to the penetrated May, but unfortunately it will never happen. So I'm just showing you some of my pieces. One, I'm working now on some pieces with soap, and I'm doing the water pipes of soap. I'm interested in a space that is covered with these water pipes, and the element that you cannot see is the scent. I'm interested in the scent. Soap for me is a material that is associated with the body. It has a very close relationship to the body, and also there are remnants of the body on the soap. So I'm interested into this relationship. Another material that another piece that I'm doing on the corner is this piece that I made of clay. So I did the 3D scanning, and now I did the 3D printing of the mold of it. So it's going to be of silicone in the pigmentation of the skin, and I wanted to have a relationship with the antiseptic beta time, because I'm interested in that for me, this is an organic shape that has the potentiality to develop and to expand. So I'm really interested in this clinical way of the availability. And another object that I did is this object that is silicone, that it was a cover. I was covering it with the remnants of silicone that I used to do in previous projects. I was covering a porcelain swan. So I got the debris finally of all this. And it's not finished, it's on process. And I feel like I would place it on a marble that is a material that could be an established, it could show establishment, but I want to be on a split material, on a split marble, showing that the liquid beyond the limits. So another material, another piece that I am, it's on the process of doing because it's on clay at the moment, is an organic material that could show something of the intestine. And I found this ring in Deptford next to my school that was writing that, and it has some diamonds on it, and I love it because it's so OCD and it's so, yeah. So that's it. I mean, okay, I think I finished with the slides. So yeah, you can ask me anything if you want.
Yeah, I like it very much. But I think with the questions we said we were trying to get them at the end, or should we, Lucas?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to cross-reference this presentation with my work on purity and COVID-19, because a lot of what Andreas just presented resembles content that I'm going to present right now. But I also want to thank you, Andreas. That was really nice, and it was a good kind of lead up to this presentation that I'm going to give now. And I think we have a lot of material to cross-reference and to go more into detail of questions now after the second presentation, and then we can kind of like cross-reference everything, because I already have like a lot of questions, but most of my questions at least are already related to what I'm going to present right now. So if there are no direct questions right now, I would go over to my presentation. But if anybody wants to ask something already now, that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say we just start with you, and then we just finish with the questions. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with you and start my presentation. Okay. Okay. So the content I'm going to present today is purity and COVID-19. The past week I spent reading a bit around like certain topics around purity in religion and society. And why I started this was the work I did with Panosmiko. And Panosmiko did a presentation in the first digital temple on the Rio Bequera in Mexico City, one of the last rivers remaining above the cities, and which is severely polluted. And Panosmiko in their work kind of like raises questions on pollution and also kind of like how even in pollution there is to be something found of value. So it's kind of like asking questions around purity and pollution in a certain way. And as I visited them in the spring of last year, I collaborated with them on a project. And after that, I was writing an article on their practice. So they sent me this one book that I should definitely read to understand where Panosmiko is coming from. And that was from Douglas, Purity and Danger. So I took this one book right now again and read through it, and I looked into some quotes of it, and I took another book by Virginia Smith, which is called Clean, to kind of like follow the history of hygiene and purity. And yeah, as I just said, Panosky was raising this question also like about pollution and what pollution or what dirt actually is. And Douglas says, as we know it, dirt is essentially disorder. There is no such thing as absolute dirt that exists in the eye of the beholder. So, and also what Smith is saying, that dirt is only matter out of place, and it's neither good nor bad. Nature does not care what we think or how we respond to matter in all its form. And yeah, and also what is important for the presentation that I'm going to give is like this idea of the belief that dirt is bad and that dirt removal, cleansing is always good, and how this affecting the way how society is structured. What Panosky did in their work was to look at the river not just as dirt or as something polluted, but they kind of like wanted to find value in the pollution or in the dirt. So they kind of like watched at it in a blitzscreen. They, in the gallery space, they rearranged the components of what the river is made of, to look at it and to find, for example, within the components some value for further investigation, to give the river again purpose, away from just like being a swamp. So what is purity? Purity is the condition or quality of being pure, freedom from anything that the basis contaminates, pollutes. And purity was man-made, and yeah, it lies in religious beliefs, but it's socially imposed on the material world and also on the animal nature. And obviously this idea of purity is fundamentally embedded in the way how religions work. And we had a presentation in January in our Werkstatt here in Hamburg, and Michael Dudek, an artist who is inventing religions, came to us, and he was going back to this, to what holy in Hebrew, kadosh, actually means, and it means to be set apart for a special purpose. So you kind of have this idea that the wholeness is something that is symbolizing wholeness and completeness, by setting it apart from something that is not symbolizing the same. So this idea, you can find it also in Leviticus in the Hebrew Bible. And there's just an example that I brought, that when the army was going to war, the camp of the army was handled like a temple. So within the camp, the holiness of the camp should be guaranteed. So all the things the warriors had to do with their body, like they had to do it outside the camp. So they had to use the toilet outside the camp. They had to wash themselves outside the camp to preserve this, blessing of God to win in this war. And this idea of ritual purification is fundamentally connected to water. So there's a nice quote from Douglas, that water is breaking all forms, doing away with the past. Water possesses this power of purifying, regenerating, of giving new birth. And on the left side here, you can see Indians kind of like celebrating like the new season, like bathing in the Ganges River. And on the right side, you can see the space in the mosque where the people purify their body before they enter the sacred space. And obviously, like at least when we like talk about Christianity, a famous act of purification is the baptism. And so Jesus is kind of like attributed this quality of like everything that he touches makes it holy. And Douglas is also raising this question of like how in different cultures dirt is seen, and what is to be seen as holy and what is not to be seen as holy. And for example, in Hinduism, the cows are sacred. So in Ayurveda, in the ancient Indian science of life, it says that cow products, that even like the shit of the cow has some healing properties. So you saw like kind of like this phenomenon now that Indians were bathing in shit because they thought like this would be a cure for the virus. And this whole idea of God acting through blessing and to create order through that is and also how he is punishing people if they don't account to him through like giving barrenness, pestilence, or confusion on the people. This acts of purification is like really an attempt on the control of the universe through interventions. And these interventions that are found in many religious scripts is also meant to ensure the safety of the group and to lengthen the chance of survival of these groups. So you see in the Bible, for example, the story of Job and how God was testing him, and giving him like a lot of challenges to send this message that that God is testing the people with like a pandemic or with like other bad things that are happening on earth. And you find this like at different stages of the Bible. So you also have like the 10 plagues in Egypt, where the 7th plague is, for example, also a pandemic. So it's like this festering boils that will break up on man and animal throughout the land. And this idea of that pandemic is a punishment by God, it exists till today, and you see it also in this crisis. But this just like as a side note, just a few headlines, how even today there are still some hardcore religious people that do believe that this pandemic is a punishment by God. And then we have another side of purification. Like we have the ritual purification, but now we also have the moral purification. So there are certain values held in society that are based in religion. And in the US, you, for example, have the purity rings. So when we were talking about Andreas' presentation, when he presented this dead ring, I was kind of like thinking about these purity rings, which we see here now. And we have the early Britney Spears like talking about virginity and kind of like being like this sacred symbol of clean Americanness. And this idea of cleaning the body to purify body and soul was also practiced in ancient Greek. And there were several aspects which also had health aspects in the way how also the temples acted at healing sites, at sites of purification and cleansing. So there is this one quote from Plato. The philosopher Plato once described cleansing notionally as the science of division, of the kind of division that retains what is better but expels the worst, and commented that every division of that kind is universally known as purification. So this kind of like this division, like the science of division, kind of like reminded me of like this Netflix series Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, where she just like looks at one thing and or like the people are supposed to like take like the items on the household in their hand and like look if it sparks joy, and if it sparks joy they keep it, and otherwise they just give it away. So they purify sort of like their own domestic space. Also in the Middle Age, public baths were really popular, and people were kind of like feeling close to God, but also feeling like comforted by with their soul bathing. But also in the Middle Age, you could see how epidemics kind of like changed the way public space were structured. So Christopher Columbus brought syphilis from America, and around this time, like the urban populations were already growing, and you could see more and more epidemics happening. And around the 15th century, you could see that this public baths of the Middle Age would close to kind of like deal with those plagues of this time. And this continued. You can see like in the 19th centuries, like how cholera was affecting like a lot of cities in Europe, but also the world. But I just wanted to show you like this how some examples of cities like London, Paris, or Hamburg were affected by the cholera, and how it changed the way of structuring cities. And you can sort of speak of a cleansing of the city around that time. So to deal with like this pandemics, you could see like this canalization being built in London and Paris, but also in Hamburg. And in order to give the cities back some structure, you could see how like the slum-like quarters, areas of the city were erased and were rebuilt in a way that made them easier controllable. So in the Haussmann Paris, you see that it was not only to deal with like the spread of the disease, but it was also a way to control the population and to control the revolts that were happening around that time in Paris. So the city is transformed massively around that time. And as Koch discovered that germs were kind of like the reason for a lot of diseases that are spreading, and that it would be that society has to adapt ways to keep their private space clean. It kind of like, these germs were now the invisible enemy and were fought at every turn. Germ theory reinforced every single lesson of the old gospel of cleanliness, but the eternal vigilance now required made house cleaning a heavy burden of responsibility. Its neglect was akin to murder. And you can see like here in the advertisements in the early 20th century how the woman was supposed to be the person that is purifying the household in a way to avoid diseases to spread. And when you follow this into like the suburbia of in the USA and the single family homes that were spreading, like it started to spread around 1920, but then obviously after the Second World War, you saw a bigger increase, and it was not like this idea of like the clean household was not the only idea that led through to the suburban cities. There were many other factors like the increasing production of cars, for example. And you can see also around that time that in Mexico City, many rivers were buried under the ground, and they built like big highways upon them. So this yearning for rigidity is in all of us, and it's part of our human condition to long for hard lines and clear concepts. When we have them, we have to either face the fact that some realities elude them, or else blind ourselves to the inaccuracy of these concepts. And I think that now with COVID-19, we kind of like have a moment where the reality of this rigidity and this control we want to enact on cities is kind of eluded, because we don't have the right concept yet how to deal with an pandemic actually, like COVID-19. And we again see how modes of purification are implemented to defeat the invisible enemy, as it also was already called like in the beginning of the 20th century, but also now by Trump. We see kind of like this war rhetoric on the virus. And now we have another question, how this new modes of purification will change our cities in the long term. And I just collected a few ideas on how different acts of purification are changing our city at the moment. So you see, also like talking about purification here, it's not to in general condemn those actions that we see here right now. It's just kind of like it should give an idea of the new reality that we're having at the moment, and how far elements of this reality might stay with us for a while. So we have the disinfection, we have social distancing in public space. So here you can see a religious service in a drive-in cinema. Then we have the surveillance of public space with drones. You can see an example of Madrid.
Lucas?
We have the fever screening here in China, but we also see this in other countries. We have this, apps for digital surveillance, which are now going to be implemented in Europe as well. And I want to end this presentation sort of like with the question of like how, in a crisis situation that we are in right now, we kind of deal with like this increasing and radical changes to public life in a way that is not like remaining in a abstract theory, but that is like really dealing with the reality that we are facing. And Giorgio Agamben is an Italian philosopher who was heavily criticized for his comment on the crisis. He was comparing the virus to a flu, and he wrote a book like in the beginning of the 2000s, The State of Exception, where he kind of like explained how the US used the terror attacks of 9/11 as an excuse to implement authoritarian mechanisms of surveillance. And he as he was like seeing it in Italy, that you had like these rules of social distancing, but also kind of like science of surveillance, he was opposing all of that, warning that the state of an exception would be used for the state of Italy to gain total control. And he was criticized by theorists like Benjamin Bratton in the street where he states Agamben is literally unbelievable. Is it some neurological tic that makes it impossible for him to grasp that epidemic is not merely a social construction? So it's kind of like this idea of criticizing thought that just exists for the means of criticism. And Bratton is also in favor of like kind of finding technological democratic solutions how to deal with this crisis. And I was just listening to a podcast of this one theorist on technology and how it affects society. And he was also like kind of like stating that we lost a lot of time in like kind of like opposing digital solutions for our daily life just because of the fear how it would affect us as a society. And so we find ourselves now in the situation where such technological solutions have to be implemented really fast, and now we kind of like have to find a way of criticizing, but in a productive way, sort of. So I think that's it for now with my presentation, and I would open this talk for discussion.
Cool. Nice. Well, maybe I don't know who has questions. Someone wants to start? I mean, I would have maybe some different questions to different persons. I don't know how to do it because, of course, it's difficult to ask everyone. But I have like a question to Moritz. It would be like, what does he think it's a community for? Like, what do we think we are looking in virtual communities, and what is the value of being in a part of a community? And then, sorry, I forgot the name of the Italian artist. What's Andreas? Sorry, Andreas. Then to Andreas, I would have like a question about. So he says he's doing like his research does how does the body behave in space. So for me, that's also kind of an interesting question about what does he think. How does our expression of a body is performing in a virtual space? Because you also say that you have this idea about how identity has to be fluid, and how do we enter into different roles. So also, how do you see what is happening when we are entering into a virtual space? Like, is there a change in who we are, or how do you see this? How does the body act in space, in virtual space? And that would be maybe my two questions to start. So maybe Maurice can start like with the first question.
Yeah. So a community. Yeah. Well, a community in my eyes is something that that should give you the possibility to exchange your experiences, your problems, your thoughts. Could be more pragmatical also. Initiate new collaborations, new exchanges of projects. So in this case, I think I was also not such a big fan of online communities, but as I said also last time, the interesting part of it for me is to kind of explore how the imaginative power of being online or being digital can be transported then into something that is more physical, and then go back to this digital. So like this kind of exchange that happens, and how an accumulation of fictional characters, which is happening now in this project, or the accumulation of information in another project, can enrich some sort of a new narration, or a new way of storytelling, or new exchange of knowledge, and it questions a bit like the reality as something that seems to be always very clear when we work daily on projects, or when we are like involved in a certain physical situation, or in a certain working rhythm. And so I often, like in my work, I try to reflect on and labor on work itself, how it gets also very absurd if you take out maybe like a certain aspect of it, and emphasize on it. And so I often create these loops of working methods or working processes. So is this somehow explaining what you were asking, or?
Yeah, it's just like now I have like this kind of like, I ask myself, what is it? Why are we building online communities? Because right now, I mean, of course, it's the thing to do, but my question is like, what are we looking for? Like, because the obvious questions are, we're looking for connection. We're looking to connect. Yeah. Okay, but then like, I'm just like I'm just trying to find what is it that we are like. What is it? How is the value moving and stuff like this in communities and online communities?
I mean, there's like this whole trends of memes and like all these things happening, especially now that people are at home and they're sending constantly. My dad is also constantly sending me some jokes or something. So it's also, I mean, expressing something, or how also humor, and like, because for me, like, humor is one of the most important things to connect to people. And that's why I'm incorporating it in most of my projects. It's like a very essential element. So for me, right now in this project, the question was also, how can I create like this situation of humor or this situation of joy for people, but also for me, you know, like it's in an exchange somehow, that people, yeah, like are willing to be a patron of one of these characters, and then in return they become like, yeah, they get like these moments of joy, even if it's a very serious situation, no?
Yeah.
Marianita wanted to say something, no? Or?
Yeah, can I say something maybe before the other question, like as a reflection, because I think it kind of connects also in what Lucas was saying just before, no? In this way that kind of society reacts to this situation of impurity or pandemics, that everybody's sort of being pushed apart somehow, and then of course you enter the questions of surveillance and control, and sort of in a way it's like also breaking up, no? Like if we would see if soap also kind of dissolves all the little cells that is trying to purify, and we are also being dissolved somehow by either staying at home or having to be far away from each other. And I was thinking, like, of course, if we wouldn't have this situation, would we be here having this conversation online with these strangers? Like, we are always, I think it's also sort of like a instant reaction to, like, building a community, let's say, instant reaction, to kind of find the collective within this isolation as well. And somehow is it kind of our immediate answer to build extra networks that weren't there, to react to something that is happening to everybody, no? I think it's quite interesting how we kind of immediately react to, oh, we are being isolated. No, let's keep together, but somehow, right? Finding ways of keeping together. So I just wanted to make that connection as well to sort of the purity of in this specific situation.
Yeah, I guess my question is also, like, we tend to want this community anywhere, you know, like, of course they say that it's that the human is a political animal, and we're always looking to be social because we need it. So this kind of actions and trying to look for a community, like, it's always we need it, you know. And in this case, what we're trying to build is our connection through the virtual space. So yeah, that's my question, like, what are we kind of looking for, and how does this happen? So yeah, that would be what I wanted to say. Maybe the question would be to the second question I asked.
I was reading somewhere an interesting phrase. I think it was a writer called Anguillar. I'm not sure if I pronounce it well. And she was writing that once a space is lived in, once somebody lives in a space, it becomes a place. And I was thinking that a body and a place, they can share three things. They can share, like, nature. They are both nature, place and a body, and they are engaged in social interaction, both place and body, and also they are defined by meanings. So about the online life of somebody, the virtual life of somebody. I'm not sure if I am too familiar with it. I am familiar as a necessity, but I think that it can offer you the easiness and the speed of communication. But what I realize with the way that I see my school, for example, how it acts now with the online teachings, and I'm really suspecting that this could also be an experimental of how can this work and get rid of expensive rentings of big studios. And I mean, this could be an introduction to something, and I don't judge it as bad or good, but I'm just thinking that maybe this could be a way of meeting and a way of embracing us contact with people. Yeah, I mean, and the speed and the availability of many things that you find to investigate yourself or contact people, I mean, it's huge, it's enormous. But yeah, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not sure if I can see it more, the extensions of it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question as a follow-up of the issue about the space to Andreas? Yeah, I got very interested by this notion of what you're interested in, that is the corporality of the space. And I want to know a bit more, what do you mean by it? Like, you mean certain sensuality of the space, or getting a bit of what is performed in the space, or yeah, what do you mean by that?
I feel it's more about the performativity in a space. There is a sensuality in the space. There is a relationship with you in the space. There is this is what I see. And the body also, it's a space. It's a place that can hold. That's how I see it.
Yeah,
I mean, I also asked this question about what do you think about how the body behaves in virtual space, because at the end we are entering into a species of a kind of avatar. You know, even though in the daily life I can choose to be anyone, in internet you can multiply this possibilities.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Because no one knows you.
Yeah, you can have this own of identities. You can, yeah, it's a performativity. But who do you really are is the thing.
Yeah, but I guess it's also really interesting how the internet plays a role in also in sexuality, because at the end internet gives the possibility again to be anything. And I see, like, every time someone enters into the internet, they just enter into this alter ego. And you know, like, it can start with your name in Facebook by changing it a little bit, or completely being in a video game and with another name. So I just think it's also really interesting how identity is gonna perform for everyone now that virtual meetings are gonna happen. And also, like, for example, an example of sexuality in virtual reality would be like, now no one can date. So, like, platforms of dating are trying to see if they can have like virtual dating, because people don't want to meet. So how that is going to happen? How is our sexuality going to happen? No, there's also these toys that are connected. So you have like a dildo. A girl has a dildo, and the guy has like a vagina, something like that. And then they are connected through the internet, and you can have sex with someone. So, you know, these things are gonna start happening. Like, there's also like the movie, when these people, like in movies where they had sex with a helmet, and they were not touching each other because they could pollute themselves. this is also closer, you know, and for me, just so super interesting to see how are we gonna interact, and that's why the question about the communities and what do we want from communities, and what's the value. So yeah, also interesting. I guess I would have another question also for maybe for Lucas. And that would be maybe like the purity topic you mentioned, and that for me, like I always try to think about like what Mariana says about control strategies, and how there always has to be like bringing order, because otherwise dirt makes chaos. And for me, it's always like where is that line? No, where is that nice middle point between not overdoing it, but also not being so dirty that diseases happen? So I don't know, do you have a thought about, is there a middle point, or how does that work in societies? You think we have to be controlled, or we have to be like in a line dancing with danger? I don't know.
I think that's really interesting how Panosmiko in their practice deals with those questions of how much control can we have, how much control should we give away, and yeah, how much agency does humans have in dealing with like questions of pollution that are also connected to the nature world. So and I think like looking at their project and looking at like this grand planning gestures that are just presented, which were an act of humans to kind of like try to deal with like the spread of diseases and to control them, but in a completely top-down way of like this Le Corbusier view like over the whole city, and this aspect of controlling like every move within the city. And then we see in the practice of Panosmiko the how to deal with the effects of just like this grand gestures that are maybe missing some aspects of how a city interacts with nature. So in the case of Mexico City, the problem of the polluted rivers were just buried away, at least in a city center. And then in like the informal settlements around the city, the poorer people had to deal with like kind of like the pollution of the river. And now, as we approached this project, as I visited them in Mexico City, we could see how the municipality was trying to deal with this problem of pollution, and they were kind of like creating like this one small park, this purified park, completely purified park. It was just like a small segment of this river that was completely rearranged, and kind of like, it was like a statement like, look people, that's how the river could look like if you don't pollute it, if you don't throw the trash into it. It was like putting like the moral finger like on the people, like, look, if we intervene, that's how beautiful this river can look like. And the practice of Panosmiko tries to deal with this a little bit more different, because it also tries to give the river a voice, and really like bringing like all these layers the river is composed of in a different space, and allowing like the biological components of the river to speak. They give the river a voice, and they kind of like point out these issues of how to deal with pollution in a way that there's potential in pollution, and it's not just like this grand planning gestures that were like magically like with like moral gestures, but also like implemented planning gestures would make problems disappear.
Yeah, I would like to add on that, because this free time that we're all having, we all develop maybe weird behaviors. I, for myself, left a little bit loose on my obsession with prehistoric cultures, and the Egyptians have a strong belief system between order and chaos. And this is a very interesting point that came a lot of in this purity things that we talked about, since their belief about like the sun is that the sun is being sailed around by the god, and each night it goes through the underworld and has to fight again, and then the rebirth of it is the victory from order over chaos. So being born and life for them is order, and death and destruction is chaos. So their whole obsession in this culture is based upon these two principles mainly. And I like that what we talked about, that normally there is no, like, what means normally, but as you said, like dirt is just a thing that we made up. It's a point of perspective, and in the end it's something that maybe is not healthy for us. And this whole purity obsession also in the religions comes also from a time where we haven't been knowing too much about what is healthy for us and what not. And now we come to a point, I myself, I have asthma, and it's mostly, I think I've been a lot into it because we have all of these allergies also because we've been too pure, because we brought a lot of stuff out of our lives that our body needed to get stronger. So this balance between where is the line between healthy and unhealthy, I think is very interesting, since all of these topics relate somehow to life and death, since too much pollution will kill us all. This is the fight that we're all in, I hope. But also too much cleanness could kill us, because then we go out and we die because some pollen comes in our nose and we get like a shock, like an allergic shock. So it's like both ways are somehow really damaging us. Was just a comment, not a question.
I mean, I think that's interesting in the sense, like, also, like, there's the example of the mothers in the where their children is playing in the kindergarten, no? And you have two mothers that are maybe saying like, no, he's gonna get dirty. I don't want my kid to get dirty because, you know, she's afraid of the dirt. But then you have other parents that are maybe like, you know, I want my kid to be a bit dirty and get tough and be hit, you know, and maybe it's like dancing with that line of danger that makes us stronger, you know, because yeah, maybe some persons would be sick, but that's how actually some kids grow healthier, you know, because they get tougher with the environment by being in that danger zone. That's also what we talked once, Marcelo, when we talked about the dangerous playgrounds. And I think for me, at least, that's always like kind of where is the middle point. It's always like underneath the danger, but it's always there with the danger. So as soon as you start like taking it out from the danger, I think it happens what you say, like we have allergies because we are growing up with no battle with the environment, you know, we're like like you say. Mm-hmm.
And it's also like another thing to add to what you said, that being in danger is also training us in a way, not only our immune system or whatever, but I also like this reference in the Egyptian idea of that each new rising is again a fight, and this like maintaining of stuff, of whatever it is, of your temple, of your space, and is the biggest thing that we all need to do. Like there is no, I think we also had it in the temple talk, the conclusion that there is no infinity to now this place is pure. To keep something pure, you have to maintain it every day, and that is, it's like a closed cycle, and it's a very holistic approach, I think, to be aware of the fact that you just cannot say now you are pure. No, you have to re-pure yourself or purify yourself each time you want to be pure.
Adding on that, and a bit of remembering what Lucas said about this fighting the enemy, which are the germs. I think it's this middle point is in between, where all these invasors, because when we get sick, we are the host of fungi, bacteria, viruses, and all that, no? And this comes from what we call dirt or a polluted environment, or also chemicals can attack us from pollution, no? But yeah, I guess it's a funny game of balance, no? Like when is it clean enough so that we are safe from all these attackers, and but for them also it's a loss, right? So it's always a relative matter of purity is more like a win-win for us than like getting sick and dying. So, but I agree that being super methodical and I don't know, very super clean might also bring other consequences that we don't even realize so dramatically, no? I mean, well, as Marcelo said, maybe some allergies or things like that, but I think this purity thing is really like kind of gaining terrain for this battle against kind of these attackers that we don't know. I mean, bacteria, fungi, and viruses mutate as crazy as we can imagine. We cannot even control how they do it. So I think it's just like a very easy way to keep them on the borders of us being safe. But yeah, talking about this more religious sense of purity, yeah, I think that comes, I don't know, I'm kind of making up my mind about it. I don't know much about it also. So I guess it's a matter of the relation with sin and these very heavy concepts, religious concepts. But yeah, no, it's just, I think, yeah, I don't know yet what to say or what's in my mind about that.
Yeah. I think
yeah.
You also,
I just wanted to make a point about, I guess, perspective on dirt and the idea of like organized mess. And I guess it's about your relationship to things in a space and the transition of things from one space to another. So I don't know, like an example of someone seeing soil on the floor in your house compared to soil in a pot that's supposed to create a plant is very different. That is an organized part of a system that's creating something. Whereas when it's in another space, it's seen as, there's an understanding of it, not understanding what it's meant to be for, the meaning of that in that space. And I think everything, once there's a meaning of dirt, then it's no longer dirt, or it's no longer unpure. And also looking at time as well. I guess when I'm thinking about purity and understanding space and objects in that space, and I guess what your point about having asthma and the human body moving through different environments, I also have asthma and have a lot of allergies to pollen. And a lot of the time I say I'm allergic to the English nature, because my body just wants to reject every birch tree. I'm allergic to most fruit from a birch tree. I can't eat anything from most of an English tree. So I think, okay, so my body is just not accustomed to the English environment. And I think that is a transitional change quite drastically from a place that my ancestral place of knowing and what it is now. And I guess when we're talking about bacteria and we're 99% not human, like that quote says, we're bacteria of other things and many things, that when we're transitioning, especially in a globalized country where now we're still, things constantly move, like the cholera disease, a lot of diseases come from transition and very fast, rapid change. And looking at the body taking time to adapt, and if it has the slow process of adapting to change, then when we're talking about bacteria and we're talking about allergies, or we're talking about disease, that is when it's the most dangerous. But when there's time and to grow and to process that and let it embed into our systems, then it's less dangerous. So we also need to think about how we're encountering different things and how we then take them into new systems and slowly create new living ecosystems with the things that we normally would say are dangerous or are going to infect us.
Yeah, I guess I would have another question for the persons who talked about purity, and that would be like, also, what do you think about like mental purity or conscious purity? Because sometimes I have this question about the negative thoughts that I have, or the dirty thoughts that I have, or like unpure thoughts that I have, and I always thinking about how to achieve this balance within myself to accept this dark side I have. And I think, so that's like my question: how do I process this? Because I think what Marcelo said about how this has to happen, like it's a process. You have to come pure every day, like it's not like you achieved a level of purity or not purity. It's like you become kind of dirty, and then you kind of like have to be aware where that dirty is, and kind of try to purify it, and it has to be like a process. So for the persons who talk about purity, just what do you think about this kind of like mental impurity, or yeah, what is the conscious dirtiness, or I don't know, do you have thoughts on that?
I have maybe like a short thought, which is also not very academical. It's more like a thing that I'm overwatching, is that most of the very dirty thoughts that you maybe talked about are created in an environment where some thoughts are forbidden, and by forbidding thoughts and making them kind of a dirty thing, they grow on to be something very unnatural. And there are many ways of like maybe some kinky behaviors that come out of it, but also very unhealthy behaviors. And I think that's the most important thing, that sometimes when you have this one fantasy, whatever that is, sometimes by just sharing it, you take the power out of it to grow to something that can be dangerous to you or someone. So I think there should be an encouragement to share these thoughts that we maybe mostly fear as a society.
Yeah, I guess a word that somebody used, I don't remember who was it. It was this word transparency, and I think maybe that's what you're also saying. Like, how do you make transparent the issues or the problems or the dirtiness, or how do you do that in order to recognize it, no, and then deal with it
for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that much, but what I'm still interested in is like the sort of how humankind is kind of like dealing with crisis, because I kind of like started this presentation on COVID-19 at this point where I said that people have this drive, or humankind has this drive to keep things in order, to keep things organized, and usually like they progress like in the system. And then there are some points in humankind's history where this progress is eluded by like big events like we see now. And the reaction, at least of most world leaders to this situation, is kind of like this symbol of like fighting an enemy, keeping control, not admitting mistakes, not like, I mean, there are politicians who are saying, okay, we can't like give guarantees to the population, we can't give them like an exact idea of how we will deal with this crisis. But most politicians are still like kind of like in this position where they wouldn't admit mistakes they do in this progress. And I'm just wondering, like, also like with this point where I ended my presentation with, that I was kind of like questioning how we reject, certain technology because it's like associated with potential surveillance or I mean, I guess the issue with like technology is that it's also like always possessed like by a small number of tech companies or like the government. So democratic control is really difficult. But I think like in the past decade, we kind of like missed this chance of like really developing good debate of how to deal in a democratic way with technology, and we just rejected this progress in a way that is hitting us now really bad, because it's just now we have to react. At least it seems like it.
Yeah. Any questions? Javi?
I don't have a question, but maybe a comment. I think what one of the things about purification is that, or disinfection, to use the word disinfection, it implies that you're, for one, you've been infected. So kind of like deals with a state of mind that we are all being infected of anything, say a germ or a moral idea, you know, when you have like kinky thoughts or whatever. So if you believe yourself that you are infected with something that you need to be disinfected, then kind of like it creates a way of acting with the world, a way of understanding a reality and acting through that reality, which I think is really interesting, because I think there is where you can kind of like flip anything really, you know, kind of what are the ways that we construct that reality and the way that we feel that we belong to that reality, and in what kind of like, I don't know, structure that reality exists. About purification and about the invisible or the transparency, I think it's a very interesting question in this like in this whole conversation, because it arises also the question of kind of how the ocular idea of the world, it's the most potent, it's the most so anything that you can see, you can rely on because it's there for us, that's reality. And anything that is transparent, it's kind of like blurry and you don't understand where it kind of begins or ends. And that plays with our minds, like kind of, it's something that you cannot control, right? Because it's transparent, it's just endless or whatever. So kind of like, I think it's really important for us to now think on those terms of the transparency terms, because it's not that it's transparent, it doesn't exist. The germs, like the enemies being germs, you know, kind of what Lucas said in his presentation, it's really important because it shaped so much about the world when the germs became suddenly the thing that we needed to attack. And also, I think it's really important to see how all of these kind of ideas and cultural fixes that we accept or don't accept affect our reality and how we deal with that reality. How do we proceed with designing our existence through that beliefs or system of beliefs? In a way, I'm thinking a lot on how this idea of being pure, or this idea of being clean in Mexico City, it affected a lot, of course, of the shape, the infrastructural shape of the city, the architecture itself, but also it shaped the segregation of something else. Like society was segregated. So if you had a different color of skin, a darker color of skin, because the dark, it resembles, you know, dirty and dirt or whatever, you know, darkness, or also the dark, it's a kind of it suddenly turned into something that is unwanted and dangerous. So all of the indigenous people of this country was segregated to be called, you know, kind of like impure and dangerous. So then suddenly what was just kind of like a discussion on germs, it became a social discussion on segregation and economic and political one. So kind of like that's what I'm trying to say about how these things kind of like construct the reality by itself. Our system of beliefs, it's something that we need to kind of be really really carefully thinking on what's the shape that we want to produce then in the real world. I don't know if I'm speaking clear, because now it's all really confused in my mind, but I'm trying my best. Yeah, kind of purification generates a specific aesthetics, and that's what I'm saying. And that it's not only the way that things look, but the way that things look have also a political layer and a organic layer, and you know, affects a lot more than just yeah, it's not simple. It's super complex, I think. And now I'll stop.
I really like the new layer that you added to it, that purity and calling something unpure as a like kind of social segregation weapon, because this is, I think, something that happened a lot in different situations in different times. I don't have any exact example right now in my head, but by calling someone impure, you can make them somehow unworthy of some rights that they might get, and this tool of separation. So purity is maybe also a tool to separate. So maybe also in a good way when we talk about holy, to set something apart, but also sometimes in a very unhealthy and in a very aggressive way.
Yeah, and now with the COVID, everyone is kind of like a potential danger to everyone, right? So we are now ourselves are the weapons being used in a war that we don't really even know if it exists or not. You know, I mean, I don't know if anyone has been following the 5G conspiracy theory or not, but I think it's really interesting how some people are kind of saying this whole thing with the COVID, it's really not even close of what the news and the governments are telling us it is. So it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's really interesting on kind of saying that now we are the potential danger. So how can you deal with a war like that? Or how can you, I don't know, it's fascinating in a way what's happening. And also I think it's fascinating how it's everything it's concentrated on the front line, the hospitals and all, but our economy is collapsing, and in a 6 months period we don't even know the consequences of this whole stopping the world the way it's stopping will affect, you know.
But yeah, I wonder also about this phenomenon of conspiracy theories and how they are related to the way how people deal with the uncertain. Because I think what is the most frustrating thing, or the thing that worries people the most at the moment, is the uncertainty of the virus. There is no clear end to it. So I guess it helps people to construct alternative realities, to find a way to deal with the uncertainty of this virus.
I wanted to say something about what Mariana was saying about that we are all kind of potential dangers to each other somehow by this concept of impurity. And and somehow also like the uncertainty that we are dealing with. And I mean, I've been following some news that are happening now in Mexico with which is very, yeah, it's very unbelievable to see how some people are reacting to this discrimination of people. Like there's like all this hate against nurses and um, people that are wearing yeah, nurse clothes in public space and are being attacked with chloride, and like in this super crazy this craziness to purify, actually, and to purify each other, no, without any consent. We are somehow like, yeah, we, we become potential danger for each other, and then other people perceive this, and because it's transparent and we cannot see it, then it becomes even scarier, and then you kind of choose to react in this way that you're not you're not thinking this is a person anymore. It's just like this is a carrier of something that can infect me or that can take my purity away. And I find that sort of idea of how people are reacting so scary, because it's so uninformed of yeah, of of how to deal with certain alternatives. It just means that, you know, we can take these concepts of the pure and the impure to a level that is completely dehumanizing, no? So yeah, when I see this news, I always become really I'm starting to think like, how are we going to deal with this, no, in the end. It's like, also there was like this whole, when there was this lepra outbreak, also the people that had this disease were like the worst in society, no? And of course right now it's not become yet to that point, but we start seeing these outbreaks of of uh, of people dealing with each other in different ways, no? In very, yeah, in very on not really solidary ways. And then I wonder also um, which are sort of mechanisms in our own way of telling things, no, or of creating fear, or of creating chaos, or creating uncertainty, that kind of are potential also weapons of one against each other, no? And I think it's also about how things are communicated, or how things are or how there are certain tools that people can could use to understand a situation like this, or I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think that there's also like this big hysteria against like the infection, no, and this big hysteria for cleansing, or for just taking out of the picture everything that could be contaminated. And that, yeah, that is a scary situation actually for me.
I mean, at the end, it's also like a weapon of you know, it has two ends. There's kind of like the citizens taking control, because on one side, okay, it's not the government who is actually taking the control strategies. It's actually the citizens who are shaming the persons who are going outside, or attacking people with cleaning liquids. I don't know what you said. So it's kind of funny how it works sometimes good, like, I don't know, like German culture, everyone kind of like is working in the same direction, which is good. And then in some other cases, it's just really bad, because the same society is the one that judges other people, no? And they're like shaming people, or throwing throwing stuff at them. So I think at the end, everything can be analyzed with a perspective of good or bad, no? And I think that's the most interesting of the whole thing. Like, it's just so many, everything is just experimenting so many changes. So at the end, I think it's also important that we don't judge exactly the specific actions, but we like kind of like analyze what's happening, like how citizens become the police, you know, like in Matrix, we become the normal, you know, the ones one expelled Neo from the Matrix. So I think it's just a time to like just observe reality and see how many things are weird and changing and possibilities and stuff like that. Yeah.
I want to add a bit on that. Yeah, about the importance of the language used in all these situations, or the terminology, and how how political it is, and how, yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, in some places it seems that all the people work in the same unison, no? And in others it's like the civilians taking charge of their own safety, or yeah. But it's also just crazy to think that it has become also a way of yeah, like very easy how it gets so into racial issues and things like this. Like I heard stories of, for instance, in the US, Asian-looking people getting shamed in the streets and all that, no? Which is it's really ridiculous. I mean, and really, really sad that these things actually happen. And at the end of the day, it comes directly also from the world leaders and the language they're using to address all these concerns and all these issues. And I just read today an article about, for instance, the leader, I don't want to put the leader, sorry, the prime minister of Norway, who is a female, I don't remember her name, and she is been addressing, I think, weekly, like in a special time of the day, to kids, to talk to them about the pandemics and about that they are allowed to be scared, and like kind of explaining a bit of the situation of the country, like to kids, just to kids, and kids are able to call and participate and things like this. And I mean, and the whole language is so different. Or when I compare the language used by Angela Merkel, that I don't think she's a superwoman or anything, but I just think she's doing quite a much nicer job in terms of how she communicates to the people about the whole issue than, for instance, Trump, or for instance, López Obrador, which is the president of Mexico, no? But at the end of the day, they're just doing a dick battle, sorry for my language, between other political parties or other political rivals or whatever, no? So, yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, the language, the power of language is really, really important in such a situation. And it's been misused completely in many places and by many mouths. That is causing, of course, much more distress and side effects in their societies.
Maybe also to add to this is also what Mariana said. Like, it's the sad thing, or the scary thing is really to see how fragile somehow like conceptions of peoples are, or like their their stability is like very easily it's very easy to influence it. And so this is also then dangerous again for right-wing parties or very conservative parties to rise up in these situations, because they kind of try to take the fear, and like they kind of try to infiltrate in such situations. Then it's I think because of this, I'm also, I don't know, I think it's important to as also Alberto said, to reflect on this on a broad level, and to and then to come up with ideas that are on one hand reflecting it and proposing like a more positive direction, or a positive I don't know, tone.
Yeah, just another observation, just very quickly. Like, I mean, I don't want to sound a bit too crazy on this, but I mean, the countries with the best response in terms of statistics and also like handling the situation are actually the countries with the female leaders, like Taiwan, New Zealand, Denmark, Iceland, Germany, etc. And it really, like, there was this analyst in the article saying, like, it really played a role, the analysis of the language they were using to communicate to the people. This is important, let's take these measures, let's take it seriously, and also in other ways of handling, of course, the situation. But yeah, I think, I just leave it like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's also, sorry, you?
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just also thinking about that, because like these female leaders you just mentioned, like no one of them uses this like terminology of like the war against the virus.
Exactly.
This terminology is mostly used by male leaders. And I also wonder like what this terminology does with like the citizens of like the retrospective countries. So is it like affecting them in a way of this? I mean, I guess like the calculation of the politicians is that like if they go into it like a war, they know that there will be casualties, and they will accept those casualties. And they hope that like as like a president of war, they will be like regarded as a war leader and then come out of this crisis in a good way. But on the other hand, I think this terminology is also raising a lot of fears among people. So I don't know, maybe there are other thoughts on how this terminology is affecting the population.
Yeah.
I like this point that you brought up with the herd behavior, that the people like do mostly how they are told or believe in what they are told. And regarding this different narratives that you could tell, narrative one could be, we are all in this together, let's stay strong, let's be solidary. Like with solidarity was a big topic in the last talk that we had, last temple. So let's stick together. Or the other narrative that you talked about the attacks is like, now we're all fighting against each other. And I think I think there are many different behaviors in the middle, but those are really much influenced by how political leaders refer to this point of view, because we still have to accept that there are some people that are not able to inform themselves maybe as well as we do, and they only can take back on mainstream media, and when there's only what they hear Trump or Erdogan or whoever is talking, hanging out, they're much away of how we are dealing with this is we have the power, we are super developed, and in the end, yes, maybe we are, but also everything is super fragile. That's also what we found out. So this very feminine approach is way more I say, like, sustainable, and also I think it carries more love and not this war idea in it.
Yeah, but Johnson, like in his last speech, he brought war and love together in one speech, and I don't know, it was also weird to see.
I mean,
still speaking about the war against the enemy, but like was saying you can only conquer this enemy by like a shield of love.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, I see what's happening maybe as a, like in a family, no? Like when you get sick.
It's cheesy.
What I'm saying, like talking about the language and like how women are interacting and how men, I can just relate to an example. When you get sick at home, like the better person to go with is your mother, Like she would find the right words for you. She would take care for you. She would find kind of this loving kind of taking care situation for you to get better, no? And the language of your father would be like, I don't know, like fuck off, or you know, a little maybe clap on your back and don't be a pussy. I don't know. So it's also interesting how, yeah, in certain cases, yeah, language, behavior, intention does really matter. And in these certain situations, yeah, of course, maybe I don't like to be gender about this, but you know, like female energy really works really well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess also the idea of enemy means that there's an us and a them and a separation. And I guess by looking at this as an enemy, it's seeing the kind of the virus as something that is kind of alien, whereas seeing us all part of the same world and seeing it as a circle of how we kind of respond to environment, how the environment responds to us, and how it's a connective system rather than a separate system fighting for survival in the same space. So I think that's also quite a interesting way of how people are using terminology to not understand the system of the world and is still kind of not understanding how we've got to this point in the first place.
I also like regarding to this point that you said, I think Anna said it earlier, that while we are infected, we are also a host to something. So there's this kind of living creature. If a virus is, I don't know, like if it's more like a machine, like a biological machine or a creature, it's hard to really get in your mind to understand like what it is. But in the end, it is part of a unbalanced system where like the thing like got out of power and maybe also got only that strong because we are working so much with antibiotics and made it that strong. So maybe it is also a creation of ourselves, and then saying, okay, we're fighting now against something that is like something like the invisible enemy behind the lines that you can always use to create fear is like this very it feels like a Cold War psychology approach to the topic, instead of saying, okay, you know, it kind of got out of hand, but we have to hold together. So this female energy approach just gives it also this more of a holistic approach on that we are part of this unbalanced system, and I think it's way more healthier.
Yeah, I wanted to twist a little bit the conversation to something that it came to mind while listening to all of the people, which is corruption. Because, okay, yes, I mean, this is happening all over the world, and each country is dealing with the information in its own very specific way, male or female or whatever, you know, kind of every government, it's a brand, right? So, but what they're not telling us, of course, that the hidden information or the things that the invisible, again, like the invisible thing that we're not getting is all of the corruption that is going on also underneath the whole spectrum of COVID-19, right? So for example, we have a friend that works in a local hospital, and he told us that families are being forced to sign papers on why their families died. I mean, 2 guys came in with gunshots, okay? And they died, of course, because, you know, they got shot. But the families were forced to sign it as they died of COVID-19. So what, you know, like statistics, really, who believes in them? You know, like how can we cross-fax the information of anything that is out there in the information world? You know, kind of, and how is this kind of like economically speaking maybe affecting this corruption, this invisible virus named corruption in the world, and manipulation, and you know, like it's. I think we all need to watch again this amazing film of Adam Curtis, Hypernormalization, to remind us like the power of information. yeah, I think it's important to also be alert on these things as well, and these other huge, enormous virus that it's been racking the world like since forever, which it's called corruption. I'm being a little dramatic here, but yes. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that this is one of the most scary things of actually the phenomena that is happening now. It's all the under things that are happening at the same time, you know, because I see the thing as a wave that is coming, and everyone's gonna surf it. You know, someone is gonna surf it. You know, like someone is gonna buy some houses when they're bankrupt, and they're gonna make money. Someone is gonna make, I don't know, tutorials about how to. So the wave is coming, and everyone is gonna try to take it somehow. And some people, of course, they're gonna have like some corruption, you know. So they're gonna use the whole phenomena to obviously trick us into other things. So yeah, for me, it's funny to understand what is happening, because right now what is happening is a million things at the same time, and it's different things. Some are kind of true, some are not so true. Some is corruption, some is big corruption, and it's just so difficult to analyze the whole topic because you never know what really is happening.
I also wanted to add to that from the beginning, that the biggest point in like this corruption part is, I think, a word that I like the agency or the agenda that people have. So when I started working in the cultural area, someone told me you always have to look out what the agenda of the other person is to understand why they are doing things. And now we have these people that are having gunshots that maybe for someone who is in that line of control, it's better to have more like COVID-19 cases. Then there is also the American politician who somehow told some people there could be coming a world crisis and gave some information to rich friends of him so they could sell to the right moment. And also maybe to add this another story, because I like this stories I like to share these like small stories that kind of describe the madness of the situation, of the opportunistic behavior of people in this very crisis-driven world. One of my friends, she's working in an endoscopic, so where they put things in your ass and look inside. I don't know how to say this in English. And they're living the dream right now, because they get all of the patients from the hospital, and the small doctor's practice, I don't know how it's called, is like they're making a lot of money. And the boss is pressuring them that they are not allowed to tell that they have COVID-19, because that would mean that the thing is closed. So there was like a big meeting. She told us this, like, and I think I'm not telling what it is because I don't want to go that deep inside. But they made a meeting. They sat together, like all of the 50 people working there, and the boss told them, when you are sick, you stay home and you don't tell anyone, no one. And then they kind of get pressured in losing their job and whatever, because someone is earning now from this crisis. Because yeah, so like this opportunistic behavior, I think, is shown in very different scales everywhere. And sometimes you maybe just don't like that one person so much, and then you say, yeah, man, we cannot meet because of COVID-19. So it starts there, and it goes up to very high tips for rich people and faking data.
Yeah. True. I mean, I also think that this discussion about kind of COVID and like under things happening, I think it's also like another kind of discussion, because it's like right now there's too many different we cannot open the discussion so much, you know, because at the end we enter into like post truth, and then it would be difficult to tackle what is actually COVID-19, you know. And I think it's cool that we start to, you know, also like this, I heard conspiracy theories, 5G, and also like corruption. So this is like the collateral phenomena that are happening, you know, at the same time, and super interesting. And I think it's so broad, and that that the problem of it is entering, and like I said, post-truth, and not being able to manage with the situation. Because just the example of like 5G, I think you heard when they said that that coronavirus is caused by 5G, and that some persons in the UK are taking these towers down because they think it's because of 5G. So yeah, misinformation at the end also is like plays a big role of it, and yeah, like everyone says, it's just difficult to know how to deal with the whole problem, because it's just a lot of uncertainty. And like you say, a lot of people are going to say opportunistic. A lot of people are going to take opportunities from this situation. The only thing I can think about that is like, I also want to take my piece of the cake, you know? And because I found another analogy for the whole situation. It's like, this was like a piñata. Like someone broke the piñata was the world, and now it's fucking chaos. Like the ones who want to grab candy are gonna grab it. The bully kids are gonna grab a lot. And if you don't try to find the piece for you, there's gonna be nothing left, you know? So I think everyone at the end has to find their opportunity also, and say, you know what? I also want to be opportunistic, because like I say, this is a wave and we got to surf it, or it's gonna crash us. So I also think we have to be opportunistic in some way, and try to be just be, you know, like have a nice moral about what you're doing, but take opportunity also.
But I would say that would be a very, I don't know, like in the point where you also storm under the piñata, and again, I love it when you do these Mexican metaphors. They're always like really popping in my head. That you are also like the bully kids in a way, because you play their game. And I think sometimes it's very important to somehow create, I think the way we are using this opportunistic behavior is a little bit different, but maybe I'm also have my distorted own point of view. But I think it's also important to not play their game. Like if you could say us and them, but that's what my opinion is sometimes, that like don't go to a level that you don't want to be at.
Yeah, you have to find a way to share the content of the piñata.
Yeah, to like sit down together and talk about who wants what and what is your favorite candy, and then you can like then you discuss about it, and then that would be, in my opinion, like a female approach on like sharing the piñata. The democratic piñata. Every person gets their own little piñata.
Or wait when the bullies go to the toilet and then you steal all their candy that they left on the table.
Yeah. You just wait for them. You let them take everything,
exactly.
and then put a trap out.
Exactly. No.
Yeah, I also think that maybe we maybe have to reset the game, or play the game, because I don't think there's us and we. I don't think there's two separate teams at the end of it. I mean, yeah, maybe if you believe in conspiracy theories, super hardcore, but at the end, I don't think there is an us and we, and it's everyone. And yeah, we have to find maybe a method that everyone takes opportunity from the piñata, but at the same time, it's not just a you know, like unpolite game where, you know, someone gets hurt and stuff like that. But I think we have to play. That's the thing. I don't think there is not a not playing option. And if you not play, going to the wave analogy it's gonna crash you, you know? So I think we have to find a way of taking an opportunity and being ethical about it and playing. But yeah, true. Maybe we have to find a system where it's more civilized. Yeah, true.
All right.
Even in the piñata metaphor, there's a guy, you know, who's controlling the piñata. So let us remember that. You know, there's a guy controlling the piñata, and when it's your turn to hit the piñata, you have your eyes closed and you have, you know, a little round of speed, so you're very dizzy and disorientated. And there's people screaming at you, so it's terrifying. You know, kind of. It's a perfect metaphor, I think. Thank you very much, Alberto.
Yes.
Until next week, we will have a COVID-19 piñata illustration ready, so we can share this thing with all of you. Or maybe it could be also like an internet app, and you click on it, and one point it comes out, and a lot of Mexican kids steal all of the candy, and you get nothing.
I mean, we can ask Moritz, like Loom can give like an order to Moritz for an illustration, and for this time he makes a personalized one, so it will be a pinata.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how
is that sold?
Well, we have to make a donation, so it's pretty easy. I think you were not listening in the beginning, but what?
I heard it. I was there when he was telling about it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But normally
yeah,
he doesn't take input. I heard.
Maybe we can make an exception for this group.
Ooh.
The piñata.
Super fame.
You know, like it's important to stay flexible, and should be like there should be also a possibility to get input. So
Nice.
Nice.
How is everyone feeling? We're like 2 hours and a half. Maybe we just make it for today also.
maybe having dinner would be nice.
I would like to ask Lucas, because your presentation had a lot of references and books. Could you maybe share either your presentation or a list? Because it would be great for
Also Andreas,
a lockdown reading.
Yeah, sure. I sent you a link on Instagram.
Maybe we can use this also like whenever.
the archive.
Because I think hypernormalization also has to go into the archive. I just write it down in the group chat.
Mm-hmm.
That we also collect everything that we.
Yeah.
So it also has something sustainable to it.
Yeah, and there was also a movie. Oh yeah, this one, right?
Will it
and
be possible to
also,
share the link?
The link is on our website to the archive.
Yeah, Andreas was also mentioning some quite interesting
books.
I think that would be
Okay,
super
I will put some titles. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
I came a little bit late to this meeting. Mariana invited me, so yeah, that's why I didn't say anything. I hope I will participate in the next one. I'm living everything from London, and I just can't tell you that maybe my participation will not be as illustrated as yours. But what can I tell you for what is happening here? It's just, I don't know, it's really annoying how it's so obvious how the British society is very, I think it's kind of a very hypocritical society. And for example, you can see everywhere rainbows for the NHS, everywhere. And at the same time, they vote for Boris Johnson, who was the only prime minister who decided to not raise the wage of the NHS workers. And I don't know. All of this situation makes me feel very, kind of angry, and I don't know. I don't find another word for that. And also I pay attention on how the news narrate other countries' situation. For example, how they narrate the situation in Ecuador. They say, oh yes, because this country does not invest in their health system. That's why this is happening. And it's like, no, actually it's not like that, because all of these countries are very rich because these other countries are very poor. Like, otherwise, how can you make all of that wealth? And I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Mariana will tell me later about the project we are working on, and it sounds Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
We have
maybe.
a lot of British people here, no?
Sorry?
We have a lot of people from Britain, from England here, no?
No.
Like 1, 2, 3.
Two and
No,
a
it's like
half.
it's not Andreas and also it's Goldsmith not in is in Britain, no? Yeah. It's
Okay.
Goldsmith. Yeah. Yeah. So like we have 3 people. Maybe we can do a Britain feature.
Yeah.
But Andrea,
as well.
Andrea, maybe next week you can talk a little bit. We are trying to get here together every week, and
Okay.
Yes.
we can explain you the dynamics maybe a little bit in message by a message. But yeah, we just have like it's just like different input from different places, and we try to mix it up and make like a little salad, and you know, like have but high quality salad, you would say, with a kind of
medium
so
quality.
maybe next week you can try to tell us some input about also some stuff that you have been experiencing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we also have Sechi giving her presentation on her pavilion. And then I'm not sure, but Marco, a friend of mine from Palermo, was thinking about presenting a book about street art in Sicily, and he maybe relates this to like this kind of like end of the world graffitis we see on the streets today. But that's not confirmed yet. Okay.
Okay.
Nice. Then have a nice evening. Thank you for being there.
Thank you.
Bye all. Bye Andreas, nice seeing you.
Bye, nice seeing you.
Plan.
See you
Bye.
all.
Bye. See you. Bye. Thank you.
Lucas, will you be sharing the recording?
Sorry?
Will you be sharing, are you recording the meeting? Are you going to be sharing it?
Oh yeah, I will share it on YouTube. Unfortunately, today I started recording it a bit too late. So the first presentation of Moritz is not in the recording, unfortunately.
Okay. Cool. All right.
But the rest of it I have, and yeah, we share it on YouTube.
Cool.
Adios.
Bye.
Mariana. Mariana, Carol is here.
Yeah, Carol. I don't know if she's still
Carol
there.
is here. Mariana.
Like,
yeah, Lucas.
Yes, hi.
Oh, she's gone. In that exact moment. So,
it was a nice meeting again.
It was super nice.
Yeah, it was a weird start. Like I was like, because I needed to react so spontaneous with like a link on Instagram and everything. Kind of like started the recording too late.
Yeah, but that's how it is. It's like the vibe has to come to a point where it just goes fluently, no?
Yeah, and I mean the discussions are always like the most important parts, anyway. So.
Yeah,
okay,
true.
bye guys.
Yeah.
Bye, Mariana.
Bye, Mariana. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
See you next week.
Ja, ich glaube einfach, also ich finde es immer super inspirierend. Oh, ich muss das Stream stoppen.
Es ist halt echt cool, was wir für Leute da haben. Weil auch fast jeder einfach was zu sagen hat.
Ja, Involvement, ne?
Mhm. Und es ist schon krass, aus wie vielen verschiedenen Ländern das jetzt ist. Es wird immer mehr. Ja.
Das ist halt, man muss immer einfach erstmal ins Laufen reinkommen, ne?
Ja. Ja, super.
Mal gucken, ob Wette noch reinkommen. Ich wollte noch ein bisschen schnacken, aber wenn er nicht kommt.
Mhm.
Und bei dir?
Ja, ja, Ostern war irgendwie ganz nett. Hab mal wieder die Familie gesehen, mal wieder Menschen gesehen.
Endlich wieder resozialisiert. Oder was?
Was meinst du?
Resozialisiert?
Ja, so ein bisschen. Ja. Ja, aber Sonntag war mega schön. Ich habe eine Fahrradtour gemacht in die, ich glaube, 4 Marschlande oder so heißt das. Da hinten bei euch, Rotenburgs Ort raus. Das sind halt so Obstfelder und so auf den Elbinseln.
Ja, kenne ich. Das ist eine gute Gegend. Da,
war alles so flach.
das ist alles voller Schrebergärten.
Ja. Nein, noch nicht mal Schrebergärten, sondern wirklich halt so. Herr Schrebergärten.
Ach, viermal, ja, Viermarstein ist altes Land quasi, ne? Nach
Ja.
altes Land und
Da
dann.
ist auch die Dove-Elbe und so.
Genau, ja. Da ist immer das Woodstock ist da immer. Das ist da quasi an der Dove-Elbe Eichbaumsee. Das ist bei der Haltestelle, ich weiß gar nicht mehr, da ist eine S-Bahn, nee, eine U2. Ist eine U2-Haltestelle, glaube ich? Ja, eine U2-Haltestelle ist da. Da war ich jedes Jahr für 4, 5 Jahre. So ein Umsonst-Festival.
Das war schon eine gute Tour, also 45 Kilometer oder so war ich unterwegs.
Ja, das ist aber auch eine richtig geile Gegend zum Fahrradfahren.
Ja. Bei dem Wetter voll.
Yo, bro.
What up, bros?
That was amazing.
Bro, every time it's amazing. Like, it's amazing how this connection is really achieved, bro. Like you feel like you're with the people in the room. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I just like wanted to put this out that I'm really, 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 really happy on how this works and how the organization is running, because for me personally, I don't want to put like an arrogant point of view in here, but it feels for me the first time, no, not the first time, I don't want to say that. It feels for me that this thing is running and it doesn't matter if I'm there or not. And that's for me, it's super freedom movement that Loom is doing something that is like, oh, my internet is bad. In the end, I just want to say, like, do you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say like a big thanks to Lucas and you and Alberto that you put so much effort in it.
I mean, in this case, Lucas is the real point of the arrow, bro. Yeah?
I know. I know. But that would be the next step. That I find it super crazy on like what connections you're making and how different this is from what we did before. Because you put your ingredients into the soup, and now the soup of Loom looks like, you know, like something that I could have never made. And this is like for me, in an external point of view, by not being in Hamburg, not knowing what comes next, is like it gives me like a lot of hope in what we do. That like those people hear from our ideas and also see what we do, and they like take part in it in a way.
And then they engage with it.
And we are doing what we did before, like we are
in our presentation, like what we're speaking about when we're speaking about, like, I mean, you about like ancient Egypt, I'm about purity, and Alberto of the sense of community, and so it's
and dirty thoughts.
Like really nice, like how it all comes together.
Yeah, and this is like what I find now really, really the amazing point in it is that we created also like something to study in a way of, we're always asking these questions that Alberto asked, like, okay, what is the social space? What is community? What is it what we want? And right now, before just talking and thinking about it, we are doing it. And I think what we are doing right now is that we're creating, I don't know, a digital gathering place, and some, like, yes, it's technology, everybody's doing it, but this is our practice, and we fill it with our content and our beliefs in a way, but not too much that it's just us. So we make this kind of space opener. Mm-hmm. And this is the role that I always saw Loom inside, and I never saw it so strongly in any of the things we did than in this one, because this format is really formed by all the people that come to it. Mm-hmm. And it's super crazy that we have like Panosmiko and what's the collective called from Anna from Amsterdam? She also has a collective, no?
Pantitlan.
Pantitlan. Like those two connections, like they're there from the beginning. They are really, really strong for me. Like it's kind of seeing old friends again now. Always, I'm always like, they always say nice things.
Yeah, they're cool. Yeah.
Maybe I can like we can start next meeting when they are there. I would like to do this like a thank you round, or is this too much? I always like this to really say, because like when it's the fourth time, maybe they're there, maybe not, but just to say like, okay, it's now the fourth time, we can say we have a thing running here. Let's do like kind of a let's see what happened, and maybe do like we said, it's like that we at one point want to do like a reflection of everything that's happened. Maybe next time is too early, but soon. Talk a little bit about.
I would still give it some time also for other people to be, because I think at the moment it's nice that people can come in and develop like the same like kind of fundamental being in the space. But I also like Sechi today. I liked her input, like how because she had like a really clear voice and how she was articulating things, and she expressed interest to come in already today, even though she's only giving her presentation next time. So
what I more want to do is like strengthen the relationship to the people that already invested a lot of in this project. And I would say maybe we can just do the step maybe on another way of saying, okay, another proposal just comes to my mind. Maybe we can implement Panosmiko and what's the name from the Amsterdam one? That's super cool.
Pantislan.
That's a super nice. Pantilan?
Pantislan.
Pantiklan.
Yeah.
Panosmiko, Pantiklan, and maybe we can let them co-host, you know, something like this, to make it more like this, like the temple idea of like that it's held from different persons.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, for sure. I think everything you say, yes, I like it. But I think also Lucas has a nice point. Like, I think there's some attitudes and behaviors that are still not so quite mature. You know, like we still don't know how, like every time people comes here for the third time, they know how the interaction goes. So maybe we can wait like maybe 2 or 3 more, you know? So everyone kind of like feels more into the vibe, to the zone. And then, yeah, we can.
I mean, what we can do. I mean, I don't like this notion of giving like specific people like kind of like an attribute, like a co-host or something, because we also as Loom tend to really take ourselves really like back from like standing at the forefront of the digital temple or something. I think it's interesting to think about language and how we address the people attending the temple. Because on Facebook now, I kind of like separated, on Instagram, I separated the people in between, like people that give presentations, and then I posted them, the others as guests. So I don't think that guests is maybe the appropriate term, because it feels like they're more than just guests. So maybe you find something, maybe not co-host, but something.
Yeah, but maybe we can invite them in the process of like developing the format.
Co-creators or like something like this. I don't know. But
yeah,
everyone.
I think we should. Yeah. I just said like I just want to say like I just see how they are in their kind of involvement is so strong that I think they are more than just guests. Yeah, they are part of it. And I just think we should treat them like they are part of it in a way that we also invite them. Let's maybe the next talk where we plan the next digital temple, let's do it on, I don't know, Saturday or Sunday. We do a time and we send it also to all the participants from the last time. So to give them the chance for like a quick talk on helping to prepare the talk.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that's happening actually, you know, like Lucas invited into Slack the Panosmiko team. So what we could do is, you know, start inviting them to the Slack, and through Slack try to engage in interaction. I would say we start softly, because, you know, our technique before didn't quite work so well when we were like, you know, come into the project and let's do a project, you know, because they kind of like get scared. So maybe if we like just invite them slowly, maybe for now, Panosmiko and maybe Anna, you know, instead of everyone. And then we see who is maybe interested and we invite to the Slack. So we kind of like integrate them into the process according to how much we see they're interested, you know. For now, they're there. So they're in the Slack and they're participating in the comments and they're like checking our post and they're in, you know. So I think it's happening. What you want to say, the thank you, yeah. I think anytime, bro. Like I think it would be cool if you want to say it at the end next time. I don't see why not, for sure.
Yeah. I just like always. Do you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to value these things because I'm coming myself from a culture where those things are like being like never or valued too late, and I'm just like in my heart super thankful for how they invest in this project. And it's the first time for me that, as you said, this happens really naturally by just like making it like we do it, and then now it happened, and now for me it comes to the step where I would just like go for the next step. I mean, it was only 3 times, but it's also 3 weeks, and it's the time maybe in, I don't know, 2 months, all of this digital meeting is like not so important again. But what we learned out of it is that we now have friends in Britain and in Mexico City. And I just say all the time when we meet people that think the same like us, we should just say like it's not happening so often, in my opinion. And I tend to, without being too clingy and saying, oh, you have to stay, but by sending out the vibes of saying, man, it's super cool being with you, but more in a, it doesn't have to be too official, but the place in the temple is not there to just say, hey,
Yeah.
or maybe it could be there. Maybe it could be a very normal thing of somebody say something and I love it. You always say so interesting things. Or I don't know.
Yeah, well, 2 thoughts there. One, the thought of how to say thank you. I think the process would be, I would say recommend we integrate these persons that are interested to the Slack channel, and then through the Slack channel we kind of like promote some thankfulness, you know, like, hey, thank you for this, thank you for that. Or if you want to say something at the end of the program, that's also okay. And the other thing, I like this idea that Lucas said about having like this a little bit, not difference between the guests and the persons who are making a vortrag. So maybe we could initiate with our naming. You know, we talked like not the priest, like when we talked about the priest, you know, but again, it's not a priest. So maybe we can start to say, to find maybe a name that doesn't involve a hierarchical structure to it, you know, just says he's a guest with another name, and he is a presenter with another name.
I think it works sort of like in the way of like not using maybe the word of worshippers, but maybe the word of like, how do you say, to congregate? Like, is there like a known to it? Like, do you say
Congregation
or whatever? And then it's like not hierarchical, but like I'm thinking about just the Instagram post because that's somehow our like social output at the moment in the way how we kind of like present this digital temple to the outside. And then we have all the names like in one list without like any judgment of who's the host and who's not the host, but we are all just the people like assembling together.
Why don't we continue the conversation in Slack, and with this way we can integrate Panosmiko to the conversation and say like, what do you think about this idea? Would you like to step into some, you know, some brainstorming about it? And I think that way we can incorporate them.
And I think we don't have to like address it in a way that they have to take more responsibility, but more in this like theoretical concept of how we're all creating this temple together and there is not the one creator, and how we address communicate.
I just like to make the temple more than a topic again, because in the talks itself we are just talking about the talks and we're doing a format, and I just like to have more input in the format, since this in my opinion has like a lot of potential, and we have so many people that maybe are, what means so many, but we have like a quality amount of people that is interested in it, and we should just like listen to their thoughts and what they like. I would like to really like, I once asked it like this question of what do you think about the word temple, maybe you remember, and I think it was very helpful to just like get a thought out. But sometimes maybe in written form, as you say in Slack, the thoughts are more honest, because you don't have to be confronted with 12 people that are listening to you, but you can more write and think about what you really think about it. And this should be like this it should be it would be for me more this one more loop of criterias and yeah, arguments on how to change it and make it even better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was also telling Lucas maybe that how do we take the next steps of the project. So for me, I think we have I think we have done it actually the right way, because, you know, from the beginning we just set a couple of parameters and we didn't overthink it. We said, this is what we have, this is the basic, and from here we all start building. So I think we did the framework at the beginning quite well, and now maybe, like you say, it's just about how do we integrate those persons that are interested. For me, I think it could be easily done in Slack, and maybe you can also write something if you want to them, or I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the idea of Slack is good, because then it's also like a common discussion on how to integrate them, and it's not us again discussing what status they should have, because we find it out together. Like as the meetings always like kind of run, we find out together how to construct the temple.
Plus I think like either we find like a kind of like a space within the temple to talk about the temple and how do we structure the temple. We can take one, like every 4 temples we can talk about just the temple, and not we no presentations, you know, and maybe that way we can have this brainstorming of everyone. That would be another option, you know.
Maybe also a section within like every temple, that like in every temple we speak like for 5 or 10 minutes, like of the discussion of the concept of the temple.
Yeah, maybe exactly, because at the end we always have we have a tough time finishing. So maybe we can have like, okay, so to close, any thoughts about the temple, about the situation?
How did you saw today? What changed in our construction of the temple? What elements did we like attribute?
Yeah, that would be a nice solution and a nice way to kind of close it. You know, we have the intro, and we have the main part, and we have the outro.
I was thinking quickly, quick short, instead of maybe referencing to religious terminologies like congregation, I was looking a little bit for synonyms of congregation, and I was thinking like maybe it's too much. I just like this idea. Now we can also use words out of collectively organized structures, like in when I'm going back to prehistoric cultures. Way more than like the civilized agricultures. There have been different roles in the society, and maybe also hunters and gatherers. Maybe that's too picturesque, but I like this idea that the people who present the hunters and the other ones are the gatherers, because they collect, but in the end they all sit together and eat the same meal. Maybe it could be something more like this, where we get to a picture that is not, there is like the priest and he's talking to everyone, but it's more like we have different roles, but we bring everything to the same table.
Maybe just call them all constructors, like staying to the building metaphor of building the temple together.
I like the idea, bro. I like the idea. Let's continue to think. We don't have to decide immediately, but yeah, I like the idea. I like the idea of having constructors and hunters and gatherers. Maybe we can find, like you say, this kind of like back to collectivists, you know, from the cave age, and find some more not so religious. Yeah, could be.
Because this was a talk I had with Michael too about how like doing projects is a little bit like hunting. Like what is the key aspect to hunting, that you like train a lot somewhere where it's not the real thing, and then you are like sharp and you go out and you're like gone for like some weeks sometimes, and you're only waiting for that one shot, and it's like it's all perfection. It's like a dance, and then you get it, and then you bring it back, and then you show it. And that's for me it's like a super nice analogy to how like I'm doing this sculpture of soap. Like I wasn't there when he was training to carve shit. I wasn't there when he was like doing it. I wasn't there when he was thinking of it, but he had this whole big process, and he just brings back the thing and says, look what I made. And for me, there's like the analogy of hunting is like a really strong thing, and maybe we can find another word for it. But this analogy of the behavior, of this very archaic behavior of bringing something really nice to the table and giving it to your crew, your crowd.
Yeah, and then it actually